So happy that you are able to join us. And this is a recap from the previous weeks. So we talked about a lot of things. And thanks to all of you who are supporting all these individuals, including myself. And today, this is going to be a good topic. And next week will be an open forum on how to create allies. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our dear Sarah, who's going to be our speaker today. Go ahead, Sarah. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Belle. I so appreciate your invitation to be here today. I appreciate the community that I've shared with you and built with you and protected with you for the past 3 years. You are a treasure. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And so we're going to jump right in because we have a limited amount of time. Know that all of these things that I'm saying today, if they spark something in your heart, that's exactly right. And we will be protecting space for questions at the end. However, if you want to continue the conversation and it's important to you, I really encourage you to do that today. Do that with yourself, do that through journaling, do that with people in your community. This is the revolution. Welcome. And today we are going to talk about loving the spectrum and really going over different relationships, forms of relationships, and how they manifest in people diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and also focusing on intimacy and how that looks in those of us who are on the autism spectrum. Next slide, please, Belle. So who am I? Hi, my name is Sarah. My sign name, let me see if I can get how big I can get it. Sarah. I am many things, including completely excited to be here. I am a mother. I am a partner. I am a wife. My husband and I are coming up on our 23 years of marriage together, our anniversary. I'm a daughter. I am a friend. I am an educator, author, occupational therapist, disability advocate, and just super, super happy to be here. Some identities that are very important for me to talk about that I'm very front facing with include that I am queer, I am non-binary, and I am femme. My pronouns are she, they. I am deaf, autistic. That blows people's minds because, and spoiler alert, this is a little bit of an ableist comment, so don't say this to a deaf person, but people say, oh, you talk so well. And deaf community and deaf identity is a really vibrant thing, and many of us do verbally communicate, and it does not detract from our deafness. And those of us on the spectrum, 1/3 of us do not verbally communicate, and that does not detract from their vibrancy in the autism spectrum. So just know that verbal communication is only one little part of identity. And I'm excited to share more about that with you today. Some of my personal passions include occupation. I am an occupational therapist, and so I like to talk about occupation. That's a good match. As far as jobs go, I'm really passionate about fostering positive identity development and self-advocacy, which I talked especially about the intersections between self-advocacy and sensory processing. And that really highlights my mission. My mission is to provide sensory, and my vision always remains centered on the creation of identity affirming context to support the equity and access to neurodivergent development. I want people to develop authentically. I believe we are people, we are humans, and we are perfect as is. We are whole as is, and we are seen as is. And I love creating opportunities to spotlight the beauty of that. My fun fact is that I was in 2017, I was the first openly autistic, openly deaf autistic person elected to government in the United States of America ever. And it is my privilege to say that I will not be the last. And I hope people ask me how many people I want to see in government in the United States. And my favorite phrase I borrow from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, wonderful Supreme Court Justice, when there are nine. And what she means when she says that is all the seats. So I would be excited to see all the seats filled by disabled people. Next slide. Some of the agreements when we talk today, you will hear me use identity first language. I refer to myself as being autistic. That to say, I do not and I will not ever define how somebody else defines themselves, because that is the exact opposite of what identity development is. So if you are somebody here who prefers person first, meaning they say that I have been diagnosed with autism or they are somebody on the spectrum, you are welcome too. This is radical inclusion. This is neurodiversity affirming. All brains belong, and you get to say, if you call yourself autistic, if you prefer with autism, welcome, you're here. I presume your competence. We presume competence, especially when it comes to mouth words. In our community, in the autistic community, competence is denied to those who do not have mouth words and assumed of those who do. We need to presume competence. We need to presume that people know what is best for them and that we need to give them the tools to advocate for themselves. And so that is the understanding that we will be moving forward with in this space. We will talk about support needs. Many times in medical communities, you will hear low functioning versus high functioning. As an individual in the autistic community and as an occupational therapist, I don't find those labels helpful, and so I will not use them. And when I talk about these supports and the ways that we are going to support each other, I do so from an abundance mindset, which means that I don't approach supports, I don't approach types of relationships, intimacy as either or. I approach them from both and. We are expanding, we are creating this world together, and we are doing so from a mindset of abundance, a mindset of inclusion, a mindset of being willing to learn new ways of gathering people in. The things that I say today are not medical treatment. I am an OT, but I'm not your OT unless you want me to be. I'm licensed in Connecticut and Massachusetts and soon to be Florida. But you can take this PowerPoint, this presentation, and you should be able to take it to an OT and begin the conversation about how this might apply for you, how this might apply for your child, and really understand that I am not giving you direct advice. I hope to spark curiosity, and I hope to protect space where you can be curious about what a neurodiversity affirming world looks like. I extend gratitude to my community, the autistic community. I would be nothing without them. They are my guiding North Star. Everything that I do is rooted in community need and expressed community support. So thank you. Those of you who are here and part of community, I see you. I love you. Thank you so much for coming. And those of you who are allies, thank you. I love you too. And I really appreciate you being here. Next slide. Some of the agreements that I will be talking with you about today, some things that you can expect through this conversation. We're going to talk about how to nourish. and how to be in nourishing relationships. We are going to go over the different types of relationships because we do not believe in relationship hierarchy. All relationships are valid and beautiful. And we are going to highlight the importance and what of healthy relationship dynamics and what that might look like in different types of relationships. We're going to talk about neurodivergent relationships. So, some ways that neurodivergent relationships may manifest that may look a little different to you, but it's cool as heck to those of us who are in community. We're going to talk about neurodivergent intimacy. Again, some things that may look different from the society outside, but we are reclaiming, we are authoring what is neurodivergent culture. And so let us tell you what it means to us to be intimate with another person and what it means to us to be and have a relationship with ourselves, to be intimate with ourselves. So next slide, please. And so the first thing is, what makes a relationship nourishing? What is that? There are many, many, many different types of relationships in this world. We can have relationships with people. We can have relationships with places, events, animals, things. I don't know if anybody in here has a pet. I have 3. I have 2 cats and a puppy girl. And I tell you that my relationship and the intimacy that I share with my cat, Lady Liana Mormont of Bear Isle, is so beautiful and means so much to me and does not mean less to me than the beautiful relationship that I share with my husband. It is a different type of relationship, and each type of relationship needs to be nourished, needs to be nurtured. And if you are in a felt relationship with another person, if you are in a relationship with a place, a system, a thing, if this could be your workplace, it could be your government, you should experience in your body a sense of felt safety. In psychology, this is known as relational safety. If you are in a nourishing and nurturing relationship with something else, you should be able to remain in trust with them. Not just one time, but many times, over and over again. We are a people of patterns. A pattern of trust is important. We need to have relationships that are based in communication, and not communication as society defines it, but communication as is authentic to us. Each of us has a communication style. Each of us has communication preferences. Each of us deserves a right to regulated communication. That should be present in a nourishing relationship. Reciprocity, a back and forth, a relationship, a beautiful growing together, blooming together, building together. Those things should be present in nourishing relationships. And again, consent, 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 consent. The right to dissent, to withdraw consent, to walk away, the right to assent, which is an enthusiastic heck yeah. These should be all present in all times in nourishing relationships. An affirmation, whether you are an autistic or otherwise neurodivergent individual today, or whether you are supporting, loving, raising, guiding neurodivergent individuals, something that you can offer to them as a gift for them to say, yes means nothing if no isn't safe to say. No matter the type of relationship, whether it's with a person, place, thing, system, ideology, yes means nothing if no isn't safe to say. Teach that to your babies. This starts now. Next slide, please. The right to say no. Heck yeah, the right to dissent. I mean, if you are here and you are supporting somebody who is autistic, if you are here and you love somebody who is autistic, and including those of you who are autistic yourself, if you're supporting yourself, if you're loving yourself, you should have the right to say no, and you should have the right to change your mind as many times as you want to. Consent includes saying no, withdrawing your yes. You should be allowed to change your mind with new information. With the passage of time, you have choice. You should be in relationships, in spaces, in context, in environments that encourage you to practice consent. Check in with each other. As a mother, I ask my adult children for the right to hug them because it still matters. My eldest is 29. And I still ask him for permission to hug. My youngest is 15. And I especially ask him for his permission to hug. My middle is going to be 22 this week. And God, I gave her the roar of a no. It's important. Give that gift to your children. Give that gift in your relationships, in your workspace. What if somebody is not at capacity? What if they can't do it? Honor the no. My God, thank you for saying no. Thank you for giving me a no. If this is especially important, it is especially vital for people like me and like my autistic siblings who often have our boundaries violated because we live in a society where literally people think every day they can tell us what to do with every choice that we make. And I'm here to say, heck no. And not only is that not true, but it's damaging neurologically to our brains. And that's a whole another topic for a different time. But hear me when I say, I've seen the studies, I've seen the research, I've looked at the imaging. It shrinks our brains to be routinely denied choice. We deserve the right to say no in all types of relationships. Next slide, please. Thank you. What types of relationships? We talked about those before. And again, and I will say it so many times, there is no hierarchy. I mean, I don't know how I could visually, verbally, spiritually, I don't know, emotionally represent that all of these relationships are valid, all of these relationships are sacred, and all of these relationships can create capacity for intensity. These types of relationships include friendships, family, your birth family, your chosen family, the family that you pick. This includes professional relationships, including volunteer work. Volunteer work is a really important type of professional relationship that deserves to be nurtured and deserves to be respected. And the reason I'm highlighting this is often disabled people are asked to volunteer their times and efforts, and we give a lot of respect to that. And we deserve to be respected for it. And I want to just say really quickly, thank you to Belle for all the respect you've given me over the years in our professional relationship. But we deserve to cultivate and nurture how we have relationships also with acquaintances, people who are not like the partnership that I have with Belle, but just somebody that I pass on the street. I want to approach them and vibe with them in that same heart-centered frequency that I share with Belle. The difference is, and will always be, the boundaries I have in place. We're going to talk about that. But another important type of relationship that we don't talk about enough are community connections. The ways that we are together in community. Acquaintances, friends, these are people that genuinely we typically agree with. When we're talking about community, this is about coming together and sharing vision. And we might not agree on every little thing in our lives. We might not even share the same ideologies, but when we share vision together, we can come together as community and create powerful movements in those shared visions. That's magic. And it's a really important relationship because within the autistic community, we are often told that we lack social skills. But here's the secret, and I invite you to tell others. I have found that within community connections, when autistic people have been validated and affirmed to connect and communicate in ways that are authentic to us, we move mountains. We truly do. Does our communicate, is it different? Yes. And that's exactly right. Next slide, please. But again, talking about boundaries, talking about social skills, one of the things that I have to admit about myself, being 45, about to turn 46, I have no chill when it comes to somebody. If I like them, I like you. And it is either 0 or 100. And usually it's just 100 for everybody. And something that I've actually had to work on developing myself is understanding that there are different types of relationships and there are different levels in relationships that have different access permissions, if you will. I am a coder, so it kind of helps me to think about it in those terms. And so, when I'm thinking about other people, what is the level of vulnerability that I have with them? Is it a low level of vulnerability? Is this a person that I can cry and talk about my inner childhood wounds to? There are people that I can talk to about that with. And then, maybe the person who I'm passing on the street is not the one. Maybe, they're not, I don't know. But the point of this is to say that there are people who are appropriate to have that with, and understanding and nurturing and cultivating that sense of, oh gosh, maybe I don't want to tell all of this information to somebody that I've met in passing, but I do want to protect time and space to connect with my very good friend about this is really important, and helps us to prioritize energy investment requirements that come along with socialization. Also, openness, along with vulnerability, being open to new things, to new ideas. We want to not only be vulnerable in our bodies, but also vulnerable in our minds. And what I have learned in my ripe old age is that there are people that I don't want to put ideas, concepts, energy into my mind, and they don't get to do it. And I have always deserved skill development that includes that, right? Also, within the relationship itself, the expectations and the obligations between those people. What are the expectations in a relationship? What type of relationship is it? Make that process explicit. There's so many things, and if I can say this, and I say this gently, like, but then the neuronormies, the normies, I don't know, like in normie society, there's so many implicit, so built into the system expectations. I don't know where they are. I would really like the normie society to embrace autistic cultural norms, which is the explicit communication of expectations, obligations between people, between spaces, between things, so that we can make an informed decision whether or not we want to consent to those expectations and obligations, whether it be in a friendship or whether it being in a working relationship. We deserve to have all the information that we can get to make good decisions, and we have the right to change our mind with new information, including the passage of time. Um, Other types of relationship that you might want to consider, is this a close relationship and what type of relationship is? Thinking about the types of physical and emotional and social connections that are within these types of relationships, and being curious if somebody is asking you to push outside of those expectations. That's not necessarily wrong. Is it wrong for somebody to have a co-working relationship and have that to develop into something more? Absolutely not. But what is wrong is for somebody to take your no in one type of relationship and bleed it into another type of relationship. These are really complex things, and the only way that we are going to be able to understand how to navigate these complex boundaries is if we talk about it, if we practice it, if we understand and acknowledge that this is hard and there's really not one right way to do anything. So the idea of a normed form of communication at baseline is kind of BS. You know what I mean? And again, going back to that implicit versus explicit expectations, really embracing the idea that we can have clarity within roles, including our intimate roles. Like, for example, if I wanted to increase intimacy with my spouse, I would talk to him about things like a date night. And who is responsible? For me, I am somebody, my love language is about acts of service. And so it is his role to then create that date night because it's important to me. But we have to have that clarity of communication. We have to have that consent, that role consent. We have to negotiate these boundaries. And gosh, it's really messy. But the best thing that I can say to you as somebody who has had over 2 decades of a really successful relationship is that you can and should always be changing and negotiating the boundaries in your relationship. And if somebody is not willing to do that to you, why? Why? Why are they not like, why is it not okay for that negotiation to occur? There may be very valid reasons, or it may be control. Next slide, please. And that leads me to a very important conversation. We have to talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships. We have to talk about this in a way that separates the relationship from the identity of a person. The best person in the world can have an unhealthy relationship. I am a good person. I am a kind person. I am a heart-centered person. I believe in love. And I have the capacity for unhealthy relationships if I don't check in with myself. So it is important when you are loving or supporting neurodivergent people that you have conversations. You yourself model what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship, which means that boundaries are respected, which means that there's mutual care, not just one side constantly giving care, constantly giving. That's not reciprocity. That's taking advantage of. And we have to be explicit with that. And I have to say, as a parent, as a autistic parent to autistic children, please understand that your children are whole human beings. Make sure that in your relationship of mutual care, that you are truly taking care of your little people and understanding what care looks like for them, because it might not look like what society tells you, especially from a sensory perspective. As an example, a healthy relationship might look like a parent who, despite cultural norms telling them otherwise, lets their child flap their hands because they've learned that that's actually a form of regulation. And it's really important for their development that they're able to move their bodies as they need to in the moments that they need to. That's a healthy relationship built on mutual care. But you know what? Some of us have never had that modeled for us. We don't know until we know. And that's the power of coming into spaces like this, because it might be the first time that you've ever heard an occupational therapist say, yeah, that's okay sometimes. Because this means a lot of things. This can mean joy, or it could mean that they're very scared. Let's talk more. Versus what a normed society will say, which is just no, no flap, no quiet hands. Oh, we have to acknowledge that maybe society is not giving us message that's right for our relationship. And maybe external systems don't know what's right for our family. And in order to cultivate and nurture and create healthy relationships, we have to ignore what society and culture tells us. Because healthy relationships prioritize that last part right there, felt safety, embodied safety. In the lecture that Powell gave, he talked about alexithymia, and the lesson that Aaron gave. I believe Aaron referenced alexithymia as well. Autistic adults routinely, I mean, wildly, per the literature, are experiencing alexithymia, which is the inability to identify the emotions and the sensations that are happening inside of our body. Why? Because we, unfortunately, in many systems, have been groomed to prioritize unhealthy relationships. And in order to prioritize that unhealthy relationship, which demands of us, which demands compliance over our wellness, we had to ignore our internal cues. And that created alexithymia. Whoa, and then so this is where the conversation gets really difficult, because people immediately flare. I didn't mean to. Oh my God, I know you didn't. Of course you didn't. We are all here together because we want to make a change. I know you didn't. You don't know until you know, and you can't do it until you've seen it done. That's praxis. I mean, that's a whole nother, give yourself some grace. Thank you for being here, because we're reclaiming what felt safety means to autistic people. And you're a part of that. Thank you. And again, unhealthy relationships, control, pressure, especially temporal, time-based pressure. Respond to me now within 10 seconds. You didn't get back to me in 5 minutes. Ooh, for me, I don't know what kind of color flag you need to, but if it's a red flag, but when somebody demands communication on their timeline, not my, that's what I said when I said in the beginning, the greatest gift that you can give to yourself or to your child or someone you love, you have a right to regulated communication. And if someone's demanding a response within a minute, that's not regulated. And in my opinion, this is my professional opinion, that's taking advantage of somebody. That's unhealthy. We've got to talk about that. Unclear roles. Who benefits from unclear roles? We were talking about before, it's really important to have things be explicit, be clear, be written, be enforceable. And in unhealthy relationship, those roles aren't clear. Why? Who benefits from those roles being unclear? That's why it's unhealthy. Lack of safety. When someone doesn't prioritize your safety and your wellness, especially from my perspective, your sensory wellness, your nervous system regulation, unhealthy relationship. Shoot. We've got to talk about it because the reality is the best people in the world are involved in unhealthy relationships because they don't know better, they've never seen better, they've never been taught better. But enough is enough. Next slide. Boundary work is life-saving. Disabled people are more likely to experience relational harm. Erin mentioned last week, our suicide rates in the autistic community are out of control. It's not okay. We need to be able to establish boundaries in relationship because it saves our life. The other top killer of autistic people, circulatory issues, heart attacks, stress, heart attacks, because we're chronically distressed, stressed and in distress. It's not like a thing that we really get a break from. Why? Because we've never been taught how to set boundaries, but you know who can help you? I can, Belle can, Aaron can, like Pal can, because we are learning how to do it together and we're sharing it in community. You can now because we're learning how to, and not just learning how to do this together, but learning how important it is. It's not just something that's like, ooh, this is a nicey nicey. And then it's not even, it's beyond the point of neurological necessity. This is, I, at 45 years old, am walking dead. The average life expectancy of an autistic individual is 37.5. That means I shouldn't be here. That's not fair. We are under and unemployed, disrespected in professional settings. My experience as an autistic person, even though I can work, what happens to me, I am very productive, and that is taken advantage of. And when I get tired and I burn out, then I'm tossed away. I'm disposable. That's not me being just a sad, that's literally what has happened to me in my 3 decades of a professional experience. And I'm here to say no more. And I'm here to be with people who do not treat me as disposable. The boundary work is protective. If you are in a relationship with a person, a place, a system, an idea, anything that treats your boundary or your need to have a boundary as you are trying to punish somebody, that's another red flag. Because in my closest relationships, when you know what happens when someone gives me a boundary, I say, thank you. My God. Could you imagine if I was hurting my friend and I didn't know it, and then they gave me a boundary and then I persisted in hurting my friend? That makes no sense. I've never met an autistic person who that made sense to. And so, as an autistic person, I love, love, love when someone says, this really hurt, or I don't like this. I don't want to talk to you about this. This is a boundary. I'm like, whew, because you know what that means? There's like 99,000 other things that we can talk about. That's just one boundary. Like we can still have a relationship and we deserve to have conversations about what that looks like because I don't know about you, but it's been my experience in life that when I've set a boundary, that's meant the end of a relationship. That's not fair. We are so lonely. We talked about the depression rates. I should be empowered to set a boundary. I hear that in therapy, but I don't see it in practice and I reject that. That's not good enough anymore. And I only invest in communities that respect a boundary and in fact celebrate them. Next slide. Types of intimacy. Wow. This is, I mean, my gosh, can be such a big conversation, and it really is. So let me just introduce it to you. Some types of intimacy that autistic people may or may not engage in: physical intimacy, which includes touch, sex, or simply presence. It is critical for an autistic or otherwise neurodivergent person to know their sensory profile, because simply because you do not like to be touched does not mean that you don't want intimacy. There's way more types of intimacy than that, and you deserve to know that your natural human desire to connect deserves to be supported. You could have emotional intimacy, vulnerability, safety. Oh, pal, I see you, friend. Intellectual intimacy. I share that every Friday now, sharing ideas, beliefs with my friends, with Pao, with Aaron, with my new friend Alex, with Belle. Experiential. Right now, this is so intimate. We're sharing memories together. We're sharing community together. We're creating new routines together. Belle published a beautiful, beautiful graphic that shows the community offerings that Behavioral Teaching Solutions has created. Please come. This is community intimacy. Thank you for being a part. Next slide. But what is not intimacy? Intimacy is not obligation. You should have a right to say no. It is not control, and it is not a single act. Just because you do something for somebody once does not mean you are beholden to do something for them again and again and again. That's a boundary violation. True intimacy builds over time with consent and reciprocity. Next slide, please. Consent is a form of intimacy. Let's practice this together. Consent is nonverbal. You don't have to hear my no to know that I don't wanna. And my no is enough. Consent is sensory informed. These are big conversations, because when you dysregulate an autistic person at a sensory level, that is not regulated communication, and we have a right to regulated communication. Is it consent if you force a yes? No. Consent is dynamic. You have a right to change your mind. You have a right to say no, and then you have a right to say, you know what, I gave that some thought. Some time has passed. I got a drink of water and I took a walk, and I'd like to revisit this. You should have a right to change your mind. Consent should never be assumed. Just because you're family doesn't mean that they get to touch you. Just because it's your teacher doesn't mean they get to put their hands on you. That's BS. And it's a dangerous message to reinforce, and denies us the opportunity to create intimate relationships that prioritize consent, because we get so scared that we don't know them. We have a right to the joy of emotional and physical closeness. And this includes romantic relationship, it includes friendships, it includes community. And that's based in consent, dissent, assent. Consent is a yes, assent is a heck yes, dissent is a no. And you get to change your mind as many times as you want. Next slide. One of the most important things that we can do as autistic individuals, for autistic adults, one of the most important gifts we can give to our children is building or rebuilding the relationship with self. We may need to undo harm from systems that fracture our sense of identity. And I want to say that not every autistic person has horrible trauma. We saw a family last week. Oh my God, I still think about them. The Tran family. The way that they support their beautiful daughter, I want to say not every single autistic person or every single person with autism has trauma or a fractured sense of identity, because there's some really rad families out there who are doing a good job. But for those of us, and that's because they have people like Belle who have given them really good guidance. Maybe families didn't have that sense, that 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Sorry, we're here now, and we can work together to undo that harm. It's okay. We get to heal together in community. Self-trust is foundational. Many autistic people have our actual realities denied us, gaslit from us. So we deserve to develop that sense of trust with ourselves. And our identity is self-authored. If somebody else is telling you who you are, then they're benefiting from that somehow. Identity is self-authored. And you get to change your story. You get to write a new chapter. You get to write a plot twist. My God, until you die. And that doesn't have to be until 193. I don't know. By the time, like the way that technology is going, but it's not over. And you've got a lot of chapters left. Next slide, please. So, in some of my final reflections, when every relationship, whether it's parent, child, a person is a person, no matter how small. Dr. Seuss, Horton Hears a Who. Literally, I have that tattoo. I wish you could see it. It's my guiding motto. Every relationship deserves safety, consent, and care. And neurodivergent people deserve support in every type of relationship. So we've got to keep having these conversations about types of relationship and the fact that there is no hierarchy in relationships. So every type of relationship is important and can bring us joy and should bring us joy. And we can cultivate and create these communities. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So high five, everybody. And relationships with yourself matter just as much as relationships with other people, because we deserve to feel how good it feels to be in community with people who love us, and places who love us, and systems who love us. And we can have that, and we will. I believe it. Thank you so much for your participation and your attention. I appreciate it. I think the next slide is just my thank you slide. Oh, yes, and I offer you some prompts just because this was a lot that we went through, and so maybe if those of you who are drawn to journaling or maybe taking a walk to think about things, here's some things you can consider. Because when we are doing this work, we need to, in a very compassionate sense, consider how we experience relationships. No judge, neutral. We all did the best we can. But let's think about it. What relationship truths did you wish you knew earlier? What does consent look like in your life? And how can we support autonomy across all relationships? Give those some thought. Next slide. Thank you. So my business is Living Sensory. Like I said, I am I'm here in Florida actually right now and will be staying here. But I am again licensed in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And my Florida license is pending. But anything that I can do, please, here are my emails, but also reach out to Belle. Again, I have been privileged to be in community in working with behavioral teaching solutions. It is a joy to support your mission because it is mine as well. But thank you all for being here. Any questions, comments, connections, I would love to receive.
How about your icon pack? Sarah, your
What's that?
icon pack? Anything about your
Oh,
icon?
check my phone.
Oh, this one. Like, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Anything about this?
Oh, no, no, those are just like an icon. So when I was creating the document, I made it from SlideGo. And so if anybody wants to use SlideGo is amazing and makes you look really fancy when you're not, which is me, I need a little help.
I actually thought like there are meanings that you can use. Well, we can use that. Let's say, for
Yes,
example, you send a text message and this means, for example, this means I'm having a heartache right now. I can't talk with you. Let's
yes.
visit it. Or say like, I need a hug right now. Can you send me a virtual hug or something like that? So I did it with. It's actually
Like a
cool.
little, like a little communication pack. Oh, I love that for people like
Please
me
say
who are
this.
like
Please say this. That is
hard care
cool.
bears.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, of course.
Yes, sorry. No, there's no more education. I just left those as resources for people if they want to make slides and have fun with it. This is I like to make my process explicit because it's available to everybody.
Right.
So
Okay, let's turn to everybody. I know there are two parents here, and we are so excited to be surrounded by these amazing individuals. Please go on, turn on your camera or ask questions because oh, well, Aaron has. Go ahead, Aaron, you can unmute your mic.
Yeah, the presentation was still going on when I typed all that in, so I figured. Um, but yeah, so basically, it is definitely a recurring problem. I would say that there's like I pretty much agree with everything that Sarah said here. I feel like people. I've been revising a bit of the stuff I wrote for the previous presentation I gave because I'm trying to fit it into 10 minutes. And I came across a theory, like I was familiar with the idea, but um I want to say it's called the double empathy problem, which was I want to say it's coined by an autism researcher who is himself autistic, and I don't remember his name.
Damian Milton, I'll write it
That's
in.
correct. That sounds correct. And basically, the thing is that there's an issue where, autistic people can have trouble understanding um the perspectives of neurotypical people, but then neurotypical people also have trouble understanding the perspectives of neurodivergent people. And this is the important part, don't understand that they have that trouble. Um, this goes back to the thing I was mentioning about the Greek words for ignorance again. It's kind of a case of agnoia versus amathia, where agnoia is not knowing, which is everyone's default state, really. We all start from a position of agnoia. I'm using that word deliberately because there's an intrinsic moral judgment applied when we say the word ignorance that I don't think is merited in a lot of such cases. But then there's amathia, which is what actually deserves the moral judgment that gets attached to the word ignorance. Amathia is the refusal to learn.
Right.
I'm oversimplifying slightly because we're talking about a civilization that has spanned for like 4,000 years here, but um, you know, overall, I think the Greeks have a better approach to discussing ignorance because they actually they distinguish, and I think understanding where the problem comes from and like that it can be solved in some cases is a lot more helpful to having a solid understanding of why these problems exist in the first place. I would also point to the related problem of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where a person is so ignorant that they don't even understand that they are ignorant. And that is one of the reasons that amenorrhea can exist. But anyway, all of this goes back to the point where most of the norms are set up to the benefit of either extroverted or neurotypical people, usually both. And a lot of times those people are just completely unaware that they have even set those norms in the first place. Again, it is a case of really the Dunning-Kruger effect because they are just so ignorant of those norms having been set in the first place that they have never even considered them. So it's a case of where I don't think it's coming from a place of malice, but it nonetheless is extraordinarily draining. And it is part of why I think I find it easier to just have spaces of neurodivergent people at this point because there are so many things that I have to explain over and over and over to neurotypical people, and I just get it. It is a draining, it is exhausting, and I don't have to do that with neurodivergent people, and so it just is easier. So that's where I'm currently sitting at this point. Anyway.
Totally. Talking about from the other side of the world, it's hard for me to fathom everything because I don't know what I don't know. And
Yeah.
it's have this conversation. And as parents like Becky and Tambria, I'm sure you have a lot of things in your head that you wanted to share. Maybe you wanted to kind of just acknowledge, but just talking about relationship, Pao said, I'm kind of like becoming emotional, but I think we are all extremely like sadness, joy, the abundance of all these emotions, because there are several things that Sarah was able to like cover, just the gist of everything, especially as somebody who wanted to create these opportunities. It's difficult, to be honest, because we were exposed to a norm wherein like, what else can we do? Well, we can change our narrative to be more inclusive and providing just a safe space. I know Aaron mentioned and shared with me that this can be political, but sometimes there is a political side of everything that we can't change, but our behavior can be changed because it's our behavior. Pao, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, it's just like I think it's like a more of a reflection from this the talk of Sarah earlier. Yeah, it's kind of emotional, especially like yesterday. I was rewatching uh Autism in Love, particularly the clip of Lenny, in YouTube, like where he would say that if she met a girl who has a car, who's beautiful, who's hot, and all of that, she would reject because she thinks that she deserves better. And yeah, I just can't help but relate. There's something that I learned here is that you really have to be the best friend of yourself. Like Aaron said earlier about the Dunning-Kruger effect. I think a problem is sometimes people would say they would use realism to I think the ignore what's ignore our thoughts. For example, like when we are like when we tend to explain something about autism and all of that, like in dating, they would say, you know, that's the reality. Like guys need to have a lot of money, need to have a stable job and all of that. And I think that's kind of like giving us a pressure, like of course we wanted it too, but um you cannot. We it's hard, like um and same goes when talking to parents for our parents. I remember talking this to my mom, saying that just accept who you are, your disability, your autism, your psoriasis, and all of that, you know. But it's easier said than done. Uh, it will take a lot. I feel like this talk has been like one therapy session, but it's just a lot of things that come into mind. Like I cannot like put everything in the um single message. So I guess if we wanted to talk more about it, we can just say it in other times. But yeah, unless I'm allowed to speak more, but I think we don't have much time.
Thank you, Pao. I think like it's again just like what we concluded. Every Friday we have so many things to talk about, and we'd realize like there are really, really many things that we don't really talk about. That's why we are talking about emotions and like the extreme emotions and how do we self-regulate, because this is like so important. And during the therapy sessions, it's not easy to teach as a clinician, especially for early intervention. This is too complex to start, but now we're changing the narrative of actually it should be part of the early intervention because it's really, really critical and important. 5 to 10 years, 20 years from that day, if we started the early intervention, let's say 3.5 years old, that would help them a lot. So, okay, some comments here in the chat. Go ahead, Sarah, you wanted to share something, or Aaron? Oh,
Yeah,
Bex.
so
Oh, go
I
Uh,
ahead.
would,
I will let Aaron go because I don't
yeah,
actually have Aaron. You always have such insightful things to
thank
say.
you.
Mhm.
So yeah, what I was saying is basically that I feel like men in this society are conditioned to not express their emotions for the most part and just to keep them bottled up. And that's a really unhealthy way to deal with emotions. Um, and they're all like the only it feels like apart from anger, men are just they're conditioned not to express emotions at all. And it also feels like we are not conditioned to express anger in ways that are constructive. Because, well, the I always go back to music quotes. The Clash wrote, "Anger can be power," which is true, but you have to use it constructively. Um, like if you can use it to keep yourself focused on like righting an injustice or something like that. Um, and I think that is helpful, but like we're conditioned to think of it as always being a negative emotion. And like a related consideration is like fear. Like fear is sometimes a useful biological response that our body gives us. Like when it we don't want if we're if we see a tiger, we don't need to have a large mental debate about does this tiger want to eat me? We just need to run. And so like that's useful. And so, but we need to understand where all of these emotions are coming from, what purpose they serve, and then be able to look at it dispassionately and say, is this is this helpful to dwell on this emotion? Is it helpful to feel this emotion? Am I justified to feel this emotion? And I think to some extent we also need an awareness of self to be able to do that. Um, like there's a whole discussion to be had about things like ego death and just awareness of oneself for that matter.
Mhm.
Um, and like this is starting to get into tangents, but I think we need to have a clearer picture of ourselves. And I think the way society conditions us to express ourselves is not conducive to gaining that sense of self. Um, it's what was it? Somebody had something just know thyself or something along those lines, and I don't remember the source of the quote. but like that is one of the most important points. Might be thinking of a quote from Sun Tzu, but um,
Yeah.
something about knowing your opponent and knowing yourself is important to be able to maintain to come out victorious in a conflict or something like that. But yes. The other thing I brought up and in the I linked this in the piece that I posted in the chat about Wilmore. Um, the thing about it is because we have such unusual nonverbal communication, a lot of times when we are experiencing um like mental disorders and so on, it becomes extraordinarily difficult for us to find therapists that understand those emotions because we are not expressing them in ways that they understand. We tend to have like body language that others have trouble reading, and we can have voice tones that sound flat or emotionless to people that are not themselves neurodivergent, I guess, and things like
Right.
that. And like a flat emotionless affect can be a sign of, autism. It can also be a sign of depression, which means that when we're depressed, we're just often not diagnosed because a lot of the signs of that depression are ambiguous and easily misread. Um, and like Sarah alluded to, our suicide rate is ridiculously high. I think a lot of that also just comes from the fact that our boundaries are as frequently violated as they are, like just over and over. And people use the word violated to mean, yeah, like to have a sexual connotation, which does happen, but it's not just that. It's like all kinds of just microaggressions, abuses of power that just occur at every level of society. A lot of times it's not necessarily malicious, the people might not even be aware they're doing it. Because again, there are all of these norms and behavioral preferences and so on that people just never talk about, which I think again goes back to the fact that men are conditioned to not express their emotions. Um, and to be fair, it's not just men. Sometimes women are also discouraged from expressing emotions, and I think we tend to have this sort of I'm going to call it a straw Vulcan attitude in what we call professional settings, where people are just expected to not get personally wound up in their work. Yet at the same time, we also have this, we like when people meet each other, they ask, "What do you do for a living?" So like, it is such an important part of our identity, but we're expected to just obey all of these completely arbitrary norms that have been set in place, and many of them are just completely unconstructive and just make people's lives worse. And that is part of why I said, be aware of the unwritten rules, but you can decide whether to respect them or not, because sometimes they're not worth respecting. All right, I've been going on for like 10 minutes now, so
Totally, I'm doing Sarah's like applaud.
thanks.
So Becky said your presentation, Sarah, was wonderful. You and our son Aaron grew up in a similar time frames, and it said to me that there wasn't more help and guidance for him and us when he was younger. I am so glad that he is in a wonderful community now, and we are receiving this great help and advice for our family. Thanks, Becky, for sharing. Yes, it is unfortunate, but it's also like an opportunity to be hopeful, abundance. As we haven't talked about a lot of things yet, I wanted to focus on what Aaron said: self-awareness. You don't need to be a neurodivergent, just a human who's aware of yourself and the emotions, your own emotions, and going back to the platinum saying, just like Aaron will also explain sometime soon on the 26th. It's difficult, but it's an ongoing process among ourselves. And talking about it is just so important because we don't know what we don't know, as we always say to ourselves and to our community. And learning from the three of you and becoming even more, Alex joining us, and hopefully more parents would hear this, because I think they are not aware of what they're missing. At the same time, they're not aware of the things that they can share the community. And we have to have this an ongoing process. I wanted to share to you guys that yesterday I was able to talk with the director of program director of Easter Seals, and we're going to create a program for job placement from early intervention. So through empowering parents, we were able to create. It's a brainstorming process, but it's a triangle. The triangle, the top of the triangle is the client, you guys, the community. The left of the triangle is the parent empowerment. So before they could even start the program, they have to set their mindset, or we have to set this brain that they're going to be part of the process. And the other side of the triangle is the job placement, wherein the employer is going to be able to hear this, so that they would be able to have this space for everybody to just be willing to learn from all these amazing individuals around us, Aaron, Pau, and Sarah, and the rest of you guys. So yes. All right, Becky, so happy to know this. We are, yes, so hopeful. Likewise here. Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just gonna say, Aaron, I didn't get to see you yesterday, but I was talking to Alex and Pau, and I was like, I'm visioning, right?
Yeah.
I want to be like everybody's wing person. We like go out together.
Yeah.
But like you guys are also rad, and I
Thanks.
really genuinely like
Thanks.
it is a highlight of my week to hang out with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So okay.
And etymology, like the source of words is like a favorite. Aaron, you're killing me over here.
Yes.
Like
That is that is a large part of why I have been studying Latin and Greek, because like 70% of our language feels like it's descended from those two languages in some form or other. If there is a word that is 3 syllables or longer, the odds that it is either Latin or Greek are about 99%, and I'm barely exaggerating. It's
probably, but I like it.
Yes, thanks.
Yes. So unfortunately, we don't have enough time. But again, I think we can dissect this presentation and talk more about it, as well as the previous presentation of Aaron and Mr. and Mrs. Tran last week. So thank you so much. We'll see you next Saturday. Take care.
See you. Yep. Bye.
Bye.